Right, so welcome, Shantel Thomas. It's lovely to have you here. So it's wonderful that you've agreed to do this, taken some time out of what I know is a very, very busy period for you as an academic. And let me just sort of, get into this by saying that you, Shantel, and I, we work very closely together. I teach on one of your courses, and I thought it would be great just to have time away from that to just really talk about our careers, really, well, primarily yours, and to get some of your sort of thoughts and insights on where our profession is going from a practice standpoint, but also in terms of the academic world, which you are totally ensconced in, and, you've got a lot of work ahead. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. And I just want to start off by saying thank you very much for finally allowing me on your show. Look how long I've been wanting to come on.
Chantal, you're really making that sound bad.
Share the space, honestly. No, on a real though. No, it's an absolute pleasure to be here to have this conversation. Really, really excited. Really looking forward to it. As you said, we do work together on the social work program, and you are an inspiration, honestly. You definitely are, and it's really good to be here to share this space with you.
Wonderful, wonderful. And thank you for the compliment. My head is growing by the minute.
Birthday's coming up soon, just saying,
Yeah, I thought there was an ulterior motive. So Shantel, you are the sort of the course lead for the social work master's program at the Tavistock, something that we share with the University of East London. But let's go back and share with us something of how it was you came into this career, social work. Where did it all start?
Where it all began, right? All began. I love that question, and I think it's always important to go back to the start. And when people ask me that question, I always say, I didn't choose social work. Social work chose me.
Oh wow, okay.
Social work chose me, and the reason why I say that is that was never my ambition, and I'm not saying that to be ungrateful, because I'm so pleased that I've ended up where I am and I've took the road that I've taken. Things have a way of kind of working themselves out. But yeah, so I originally wanted to go into law. That was always my first. Law is my first passion.
Right.
I love a good argument. I love being able to state my case. I really, you're laughing because you probably can see it now.
I wasn't going to say anything, but anyway, carry on.
That was my first, my first love, so to speak. So that's what I wanted to study. And then I remember, I think it was a tutor or a teacher at school mentioned that law wasn't for somebody like me. I didn't want to just do law. I wanted to be a barrister or a judge, Queen's Counsel, wear the wig, wear the gown, and involved in that process. So after you do the degree and everything else, there's a lot of networking, secret boys clubs, secret members clubs, having dinners and all sorts of things in the Inns of Courts. Now, with anybody who knows law and is in that kind of field would know that, it is very cliquey, and it is about who you know as opposed to what you know. Shani from the block doesn't know anybody in that field. There was nobody really to help, help me navigate that path. And I remember my careers tutor, said, not sure it's anything for you. How about doing criminology? That would fit, that would more fit somebody like you. I know. So yeah, like an idiot, I did criminology. And I say that, but I really enjoyed learning, about, the psychological aspects of crime, and, and I think that's where I really started to unpick the stuff around race and racism. And we haven't touched on that yet, but another role that I do is as the anti-racism lead for the British Association of Social Workers. And again, that is tackling inequalities, tackling justice, from a social work perspective. So yes, I think then is when I started to kind of get the, get the understanding, or start to see the patterns, of the systemic injustices that we're kind of seeing now, really. So I studied criminology, began to work around, with young offenders, youth justice, that kind of arena, mentoring, trying to divert young people away from crime. I grew up in South London, so that's my background, there was a lot of, you know, crime and poverty, and, you know, that was kind of my everyday reality. You know, that was what I saw, and I felt like university was a way for me to get out of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I used to travel from South London over to University of Middlesex
Oh wow, my
University.
ends. Mm.
Oh gosh, yes. Um,
West
and
London.
I used to think, oh, wow, it was literally like a journey, like I'd been transported into a different world. Because when
Mm.
I entered the university building, it was like being in a different world, literally. You know, the
Mm-hmm.
language, the culture, the behavior was far removed from anything that I'd knew. You
Mm-hmm.
know, but I embraced it, I absorbed it all, I loved it, and then I would take the train right back to Brixton. You know, literally the other end of the Victoria line. So yeah, so that was my first, you
Well,
know.
I mean, in a way, your sort of first love, which was law, uh, you know, your path doesn't seem to have sort of diverted too far away from it, although a different angle. But I think it's interesting what you said about how you were kind of given this idea that this wasn't really
My
for
face don't
you.
fit.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
that's kind of sad.
No, it is. And I think it's, when I say recently, I'm saying probably 5 to 8 years where I really started to do that reflection and kind of put all that together and really think about how did I end up here? What happened? What kind of
Mhm.
stories, what kind of narratives, what kinds of perspectives were fed to me? You know, who inspired me or who discouraged me? You know, and I really started to go back, and there's pivotal moments where I remember, you know, people whisper things in your ears, or, you know, kind of try to discourage you from doing things that, you know, if it was the Chantel now, you know, I
Mhm,
would have,
mhm.
yeah,
Yeah,
middle finger,
disregarded that.
apologies.
But
Yeah.
I mean, again, I like what you said about, you know, you reflect back and you start putting the story together, because that's another thing that, and I find I'm doing that a lot, particularly as at the age that I'm at. But at the time when things are happening, it's just happening. You're not really aware or conscious of
Nope.
what's going on. You don't
Nope.
have the life experience to kind of think it through.
No one to guide you. There's no
No
one to
one to go.
steer you, is
Yeah,
there?
yeah,
No one. There was
yeah,
no one.
yeah.
I was just feeling my way through the dark. And that's what it felt like,
Absolutely.
just feeling my way around and just hoping, you know, that I would get to where I wanted to go. I was a reader, so
Mhm.
that was my way to kind of come out of my immediate surroundings. You know, I
Yeah.
had a vivid imagination. I can visualize things. You know, I am. That's me. If I can see it, I can do it. I can be
Mhm,
it. You know, and I've
mhm.
always been that child. Like, if you ask my mother now, she will tell you. You know, they're all trying to shut me up. I always wanted to be, you know, so
Mhm,
that's something that I think is innate, that, you know,
mhm,
nobody could teach me that.
mhm,
Um, but I do feel that, you know, I have had to kind of just, as I said, feel around in the dark for a lot of things. I've had ideas, and I've had, as I said, I've wanted to do things, but not really known how can I actually achieve
mhm,
that? You know, I
mhm,
knew I wanted to, always wanted to, you know, to be successful, wanted to be happy. And, you know, there's so much things you want to do, help people, support. I always about, you know, standing up for people's rights, justice, people
mhm,
that are less
mhm,
fortunate. Um, or people that are unheard. I hate saying people who don't have a voice, because everybody has a voice, but it's whether others choose to listen to that
Sure,
voice. You know,
sure.
so I always talk about, you know, unheard people as opposed to you know, voiceless. But yeah, so that was always, you know, as I said, from a child, you know, the one at nursery would crying on the floor. I'll be the one to go over and push the bully away. That's nobody can teach you that, you know. So yeah, as I said, the reflection started a few years ago, and it's really, I've started to write a lot more, reflect on my past. And again, that's part of my, so because I didn't mention, you know, I've started my master's, you know, my PhD around anti-racist leadership, and I'm
Mhm.
taking an auto ethnographic stance. Is that the word? You know, I'm still
It
learning all
is
these big terms, you
ethnographic.
know.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah,
still
yeah.
learning all these big terms, honestly.
Big
So yeah,
word,
so
big terms, but you know, will probably
that's going
become
to thread
second language. Yeah,
through, yeah, that's
yeah.
going to thread through my dissertation. So it is about positioning me at the center of my research, you know, and my experience, and how that has shaped, you know, who I am, and what I want to do going forward.
I mean, I do think that you know, your story will have lots of resonances with some of our people. I mean, even as I'm hearing you now, I can see aspects of my own development. The whole thing around floundering and looking and knowing that you want to do something, knowing that you have that ambition, but not necessarily getting the guidance because of our folks around us not necessarily knowing. They're not
Knowing.
really, then this is something out of their experience. So
That's right.
In a sense, knowing that, you kind of feel an obligation to pass on what you know to those who are coming up. So let's then continue on with the story. So law was your thing. You then sort of got dissuaded to some extent, but you didn't quite entirely lose that interest, and then you kind of moved through working in youth justice and so on. So then what? Take us further then.
Okay, we'll do. Yeah. Right. So it was I had my youth justice role. Then I began a role as what was it called? Antisocial behaviour officer.
Okay. Yep.
So that was ASBO. Remember the old ASBO?
Yes, I do indeed.
Right. So I
used to run a project. That we dealt specifically with youngsters who, trying to prevent them from getting into crime.
Exactly.
ASBO was the language of the day.
That was the language. ASBO, ASBO. That's what you say. That's not the term anymore. But anyway, so this was I can't remember when this was, early 2000s or coming up. Anyway. So when I had that role, I was managed by a social worker, because it was like a joint funded post. It was like a new position for this local authority, and it was joint funded by so the police, the local authority, and the community safety team. So I had 3 different supervisors, and it was the social work supervisor, when I'll be talking about the things I would be wanting to do with the families, to try and help them, to try and support them, to try and prevent them from their tendencies from being breached, and then having to leave, and then the disruption for the children, the moving to schools, so it was those conversations I was having. And she said to me, "Have you considered being a social worker?" I was horrified. I said, "No." Honestly, that was like, it was like, social work, all they do is take away people's children. That was my idea of social worker. That is all I knew about social work. I don't want to take away, that's not what I want to do. I want to support people, blah, blah, blah. So throughout those supervision sessions, so I met with her every 2 months, it was, bi-monthly. Yeah. So I we would begin to talk about, my plans, what I was actually doing was making care plans, was making support plans, not knowing that's what they were, but that's the conversation we were having. And then literally we got to the July, and she literally said, "Oh, by the way, I've been writing you a personal statement for your application for university."
Oh, wow. For those of you listening, she's giving a look.
Sorry. I couldn't, I said, "What?" Anyway, fast forward again. So that year, so that was the July. Again, obviously, anyone knows the UCAS calendar, that's way out of sync. So I had to apply through clearing, for that year.
Right. So she did this without your knowledge.
She basically did. So she did the statement. Obviously, I had to apply it myself. So when she sent me the paper, when she sent me what she had written in my personal statement, I literally had to probably change 1 or 2 lines. Yeah. Literally fill out the form, attach that to it, and send it off. To just do. What have you got to lose? And I was like, okay, and reluctantly, I completed the form, sent it in, got called for an interview. Fast forward, when I got the place, that was the first time, so it was me and another lady, it was the first time that Goldsmiths had ever taken anybody through clearing for their social work program. Anyone who knows Goldsmiths, it's quite a small program. Yes. And that was the first year, and that was 2006. Wow. When I started my training as well. So that's kind of how it began. So even when I got the place, to do a master's, like I was happy with my degree, first one in my family to go to university. I was cool with my degree. I graduated, I threw my hat. I was happy, Now I'm going to do a master's. Okay, cool. Still pinching myself. The first day I rocked up to the university, it's the best thing I've ever done. Doing my social work qualification taught me so much about me, who I am, how I was parented, why I parent the way I do. It taught me so much. So I'm really, really grateful, for my supervisor back then, for having me, do that, because as I said, social work was never a profession I'd ever thought about, ever growing up to do. And I found that it is a lot more. People out there, we do a lot more than take away people's children. Actually, we do much, much more. But that was the narrow-minded view that I had of it.
Well, yes, and I mean, it sounds as though it was quite an inspirational and pivotal experience for you? Because I mean, when I remember my own training, it was huge, it was significant. And I mean, our university was, well, the one I attended was very politically driven. Okay. So it was different again, but it opened up my eyes to lots of things which I was unaware of. So I do think, you know, for people who embrace their professional training, and, you know, we pray that everyone has good experiences, but it can be pretty significant.
Yeah, it definitely was. You know,
so and I guess to some extent it will probably link with your drive in terms of what you're doing now. But
100%.
What then happened after Goldsmiths? You know, I used to work there.
I remember you saying that, and I remember you
I
had
Dr.
Claudia Bernard, didn't you, on
Yeah,
your show
she was my
recently as
boss.
well, you know,
she was my boss.
and she was my placement tutor and my
Wow.
dissertation tutor as well, you know.
Oh,
so
wow.
I hold that lady in such high regards, you know, such high regard, you know. There's so much. Sometimes she can be a bit scary. Sorry, Claudia, if you're listening, you know, but it was that kind of stern. You need,
yes.
You know, you needed to fix up, you know, she knew what was to come.
Well, let's give her a shout out to the
Big up,
time,
Claudia.
You know what I mean? Big up, Claudia. At the time we're recording this, she's actually about to host her book launch.
Intersectionality. Yeah. Right, we need to log on to that afterwards.
Yeah, we do indeed.
We will.
So Goldsmiths, it was pivotal for you. It was important for you. You learned a lot. Take us further on then. What happened?
Right, so the Goldsmiths, when we did our infant child observation, that's the human growth and development module. They used a Tavistock model, which is, you know, is about, you know, observing, standing back, not writing, you know, till afterwards, and, you know, coming back and applying the theory to what you see, you know. So that was the model they used. And I always remember this Tavistock place. What's that, you know? And I remember just thinking, it was always a bit different, but secretly there was something that intrigued me about it, you know, but I wouldn't openly discuss it in the classroom because I don't know, I felt a bit geek. I was quite a geek, you know, in the sense that I love to read and love to just get I could get lost in books. But I wouldn't be one to sit on a bus and read books or go with my friends because my social circle wasn't really that
street cred, man.
way.
Street cred.
I'm telling you, it wasn't cool. And it sounds so silly now. Kids, stay in school, you know, it's the best thing to do. Okay, right, okay, stop now. But yeah, so there was something intriguing about this Tavistock, you know. Yes, you know, Freud and beyond, and a lot of the theories around it. There was a lot of stuff that, you know, will definitely, you know, that do not speak to me, but there's just something intriguing. So I always remember thinking, this is interesting, but again, not really knowing what to do with it as well. And I remember just before I left Goldsmiths, I remember saying to Claudia, you know, I don't want to go into practice anymore. I want to stay and be an academic. I want to stay in higher education. The look she gave me, you know, she said, go out there and practice, you know, and if you still feel the same, come back in 2 years' time. 10 years later.
Yes, well, yes. And your stripes,
yeah. But it was it's the best advice. There's no way I would have been ready for higher education, you know, straight out of the masters, you know, going out into the field. I specialized in child protection, frontline, and I think you know, I listened to one of your another one of your speakers on the other day. Nadine Boyne, I think it was, and she mentioned, you know whether you're a long-term social worker or a short-term social worker, you know, and I said, exactly, I knew long-term was not for me. I didn't want all these relationship buildings, this attachment stuff. I'm not interested in that. Firefighting, in, out. So assessment was where I excelled, is what I prefer to do. And
well, let's pause there for a minute, because again, another resonance that I have with you.
We're sisters, man. Come on.
Well, yes and no, because no.
Okay.
But yes and no, because I recall vividly, I recall vividly when I was training, and I was kind of thinking, oh God, no, I don't want to get into all the mess that can happen in family life. You know, I just didn't want to do that. I too felt, well, in actual fact, my leanings were more towards community work. And then when I did actually come into statutory practice, it was, I prefer short-term, high turnover, quick. But then after a while, and I think it was when I had my own child, that something else happened to me. And I began to see the value of things like consistency, long-term, routine, relationships. So it seemed to have evolved at a stage that I was in terms of my own life. So I don't know, it's different for everyone.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, no,
I certainly recognize what you were saying earlier.
Yeah, that moment didn't happen to me, honestly. I'm long term away. I don't know. It was long term. But then again, the law kicked in again, and I went to Kafkas.
Oh wow.
So I did a stint around Kafkas, about 2 years, children's guardian, family court advisor. Really enjoyed that. That took me away from obviously from frontline practice, but it really sharpened up kind of the analysis and really, just understanding, because obviously that's a lot of short-term work as well, particularly when you're a family court advisor looking at private law work, but again, it's the mess of the family disputes. You're trying to unpick, but you see the children once and you're expected to write a report that then goes in front of the courts, and and I don't know if it was you, I was saying, I was speaking to someone the other day, it's the same role, it's the same social worker, but as a guardian, it's like you're elevated to a higher position. The judge will be looking at you and say, yes, Miss Thomas, what's your perspective on this? What's your view? And I'll be looking around like, who's Miss Thomas? Oh my God, he's talking to me. Because when I'm in local authority trying to, get a care order for the children, the judge doesn't, it's not the same respect, the legal team, they don't look at you in the same way. Family court advisor, you're literally sitting side by side with the judge, and they're looking at you for your expertise around, childcare and childcare knowledge and everything else, while they've got the, the legal knowledge. But yeah, so I did a stint in Kafkas, still had that inkling to teach. So I practice teacher. I was still doing, I was doing some bits with with Brunel as an associate lecturer. And always still remembered. And I did, I think about 2016, I think it was, myself and Claudia collaborated on a chapter in a book around safeguarding Black children using a strengths-based practice. I don't think I've told you that.
No, you haven't. Yeah.
Practice, So she came with all the academic side, and it was my practice. I did a lot of the, applying the theory to practice. So that was in a book called Social Work in a Diverse Community.
Okay, I'm gonna have to get the proper reference from you so I can put them in the show notes.
I can show you the book here. So here's the book here.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so Direct Society. Yeah, and then I think it's chapter 5.
Is that your gold-plated version? Is it?
Listen to me, man. Honestly, it needs to be signed though. But also Claudia's book, Safeguarding Black Children. While I didn't write a chapter myself, she did contact me a few times around my practice knowledge.
Sure.
I just didn't have the time or the headspace to write, and I'm quite upset I missed that opportunity, to be honest. And I'm just putting that out there.
There'll be others. It's fine.
But my name's in the book now at the front. If you look at the front, there's credits to me, so you can look.
Okay, good. Yeah.
No, but on a serious note, so I always wanted to get into higher education. As I said, when I finished the masters, I love learning, I love teaching, I love giving back as well, and that's what a lot of what it was about. But as I said, as the longer you stay in practice, the harder for me. It was harder to come out. I felt like going into practice, practicing as a social worker is what I knew. Click my fingers, I could do it. Higher education, how do you do that? How do I get in? What do I do? Didn't really, know how to navigate that sphere really. But actually, I did the PSDP, so the course that you now co-lead. Joe Williams. I was one of the first.
Let's make a correction. I don't lead it.
Oh, sorry, co-deliver.
Co-deliver.
Oh, sorry, Joe.
Oh God.
Co-deliver. Yeah. So that course. So I think I was one of the on the first cohort.
Right.
And as part, so that I think you've explained about that course around developing supervisors in practice and encouraging kind of reflective spaces. And in order to kind of enhance practice. So part of that course, you're entitled to kind of 2 sessions with a therapist, and able to for you to talk about your practice and everything else.
3 sessions, darling.
It was 2. We had 2.
Oh, you only had 2. Oh,
we only had 2.
Short change.
And I did say we needed more because those honestly. That was a turning point for me. Those 2 sessions were the turning point. I think after that was when I made the decision that I'm going to go into higher education. That's what I need to do. And it's either do or die. So yeah, literally January, I finished practice. February, March, I started my first full-time higher education teaching post
Right.
at Canterbury Christchurch University up in Kent.
Wow. Okay.
That's
Oh,
where
I
it
didn't
all
realize that you did
started.
a stint in Kent.
Yeah, that's where it started. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And you were
Yeah.
teaching on a social work program there?
Social work, yep, social work programs. It was a joint, so it was a 1-year contract. It was a joint funded program with a teaching partnership. So that was Canterbury Christchurch and University of Kent, Medway Local Authority, and Kent County Council. So that was their that was their partnership, and that role was kind of, I don't know, they said a teaching partnership role, but yeah, it was a bit. Anyway, it was a teaching role. That's all we need to know.
Okay.
And that was my first full-time innings. As I said, I had done a few sessions with Brunel, but that was my first innings, in a higher education.
Okay, using the cricket
Institution.
terminology there. So Shantel, what I think I'm curious about how you found that transition. I mean, you were a practice educator, so in a way, education wasn't something that was absolutely new to you, but putting yourself in a full-time teaching role, how did you find that transition?
Honestly, absolutely scary.
Okay.
even though you said,
Let's be
and all of that.
Let's be transparent.
That's right. So yeah, no. As I said, I knew how to be a social worker. That was what I had done for years. Now being in this, and obviously you have an idea of higher education. I had this picture in mind. Remember I said to you, I visualized, so I had this, all these highly, intelligent people walking around using big words, would I fit in this young girl, black woman rocking up, big hair. But by then my hair was natural, big glasses. You can't see me, but if you, it's up now. But yeah, how would I be perceived? How would I be accepted? What was it going to be like? Would I understand? So I had a lot of questions, but at the same time, it wasn't stopping me from going. I was that was where I needed to be, and that was the space I was going to occupy. But yeah, I had a lot of all of that imposter syndrome. That's why I learned the term. Who knew that was a term until I started that course? I didn't know. Oh, it's a term, is it? I had a lot of that self-doubt, and I had to work through that. I had a lovely mentor at Christchurch, going to big her up as well. Edith Lewis, her name is. Absolutely lovely woman. She's been at Christchurch for, I think, 12, 13 years now. And she kind of took me under her wing and kind of helped me navigate. But I think the first thing for me that was the hardest to understand is the acronyms. Oh my goodness.
Gosh, yeah.
You think social work have acronyms? The higher education, I'll be the one that be like, sorry, what does that mean? What does that mean, please? Like, what does that mean? Anybody that knows me knows that I'm not backwards in coming forwards. I will ask the questions that nobody wants to ask. I didn't mind putting myself out there. I already stood out. What is another question? So yeah, it was scary, but honestly, the best thing I've ever done.
Yeah, and I think what you're also emphasizing is the value of mentoring and mentorship.
100%.
And we can't speak highly enough about that. And I know that we certainly are trying to embrace that whole kind of process in our own course at the moment. I'm thinking about that for students. And I know I still do a lot of sort of coaching and mentoring of social work leaders and practitioners and so on. So, it's invaluable.
I'm telling you.
So what happened after Kent?
After Kent, so did my year in Kent. Oh, okay, let's go back a bit. So as I said, Edith was a really, massive support for me in the team. And she kind of introduced me to these awarding gap and, the disproportionate experience for Black students on our courses, for them getting the first and the 2-1s. Much more disproportionate number of failures, all the stats that we know, the negative stats in relation to particularly Black students in education as a whole, but obviously in social work is my specific area really. So I started to really read and research and kind of get a bit more understanding around that, and yeah, it didn't sit right with me, and I think that was the point when I needed, and this is obviously pre-COVID and in 2020 and George Floyd and all of that, but I started to really get involved with that at Canterbury Christchurch, and I must have applied. Obviously, me new into higher education, you know, there was this quite senior position actually as an anti-racism, there was anti-racism lead, but it was something looking at the, you know, race on the curriculum. And while I knew that I wasn't really qualified or experienced enough to get it, what it did, it got me in front of the Deputy Vice Chancellor. I was able to have a conversation with her, you know, and anyone that knows me again, I had an hour, and try now that I occupied 95% of that hour, telling her how I felt, you know, what she needed to do, what needed to change, you know. And I know she must have thought,
sounds like you, Shantel.
But you know, like you have your opportunity, and you can't.
Yeah, you have your moment. You got to make the best of it, yeah.
You know. And obviously she called me back again for another meet, and kind of for me to help her navigate, you know, what she was doing, because she was the one that was working around closing the awarding gap. But that was literally kind of probably 2 or 3 months before my contract was due to end. So I start so that's, you know, how I started to, you know, really get into and start to embrace kind of the anti-racism work and really look at the inequalities, you know, in the system. So left Canterbury Christchurch, took on a senior lecturer position at Hertfordshire, and again met another amazing woman. Big up Vida Douglas, you know, all these people on my journey, I've got to big them all up, because if it wasn't for them, you know, I wouldn't be here.
Critical.
Again, you know, took on a role there leading the staff network, Black Asian Minority Staff Network as well. Worked with the Deputy Dean there around the awarding gap strategy for HSK, so the School of Health and Social Work. I was leading the social policy module, also the first year transition module, and just teaching on other modules as well. So I got involved in admissions, service use. You know what? I literally threw myself in. So I had my experience.
But was that a full-time job or a part-time job?
That was full-time.
Wow.
Yeah, that was full-time. For the first year and a half was full-time. And then towards the end is when I took on the BASW role as well.
Okay.
So I was doing them together. Yeah, so that was full-time to begin with. Literally threw myself in to that role there as well.
Okay, well that sounds so interesting and exciting. What then happened with regards to BASW? How did they manage to get hold of you?
Okay, so BASW, how did that start now? So at Hertfordshire, as I said, you know, Hertfordshire are part of the teaching partnership as well, and that is with the Tavistock. So this is how it kind of gets all juicy. So another lady I met there, Jo Williams.
Oh, the great Jo Williams.
Yeah, big up Jo.
Jo's been a guest on Social Workers Matter, so do go back and listen
she?
Oh, yes, she has. She has.
Oh, she got here before me. Oh,
yeah,
that's it now, right?
She certainly did. But no, we had a great chat too. But anyway, carry on.
I'm gonna look for her.
Yeah,
look
but yeah,
so we were approached by one of the people at Hertfordshire Partnership, you know, to look at developing an anti-racist module. So a becoming an anti-racism module. It's called a becoming an anti-racist practitioner.
Yes.
Module, you know. And anyone that knows Jo, she's been on here, you know, she's really experienced around curriculum design and you know module course development and things like that. And where that was quite new to me, the content, you know, I knew what I wanted to bring. I knew what kind of material, how I wanted it to be delivered. And I remember we literally, you know, spent many a time on Zoom, because again, this is lockdown now. We're going into lockdown now. Many a time on Zoom, sitting down, planning.
Keep you both out of trouble. So, you know, do something constructive with your time.
Stop it. But it was also about us getting to know each other.
Yeah, sure.
Because it's important when you're doing anything around kind of race and racism. You know, it's so emotive. It's so topical. It's so political. And I think we both had our own reasons for wanting to come together.
Sure.
But also, you know, Jo is a white woman. I am a black woman. You know, it was important that we modelled how we wanted practitioners to go out there and approach the subject matter as well. So to do that, we had to learn how to work together. So yeah, we spent, you know, we developed the whole thing, you know, over Zoom, you know, delivered the first cohort over Zoom. I think the end, you know, we had some face-to-face meetups. But that in itself was another pivotal experience, a pivotal moment around, you know, devising something from scratch, but also then seeing it come to fruition, you know. And I mean, you know, that was amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, you guys have roped me in on it now, myself and Tanya. And I'm really looking forward to all the learning and all the sharing that we're going to experience, because, you know, these kinds of trainings are not easy. They take an emotional toll, and I think the fact that you guys are now sharing that a bit more, hopefully will reap lots of benefits, because you can't do this alone.
You can't. No, honestly, you
this
can't.
stuff
It
alone.
is emotional, and I think what's really great about Jo, she's so intuitive.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
she can just look on Zoom and just look at me and know, you know, whether I need, you know, are you okay? You know, what's going on for you, kind of thing. She would always check in, you know, and she will describe it as carrying a shopping bag. She's got one handle, I've got the other. Sometimes she has to carry the, you know, the heavy load. Sometimes I have to do it. But she realizes, obviously, because of the nature of the subject, the emotional toll is heavier on me.
Yes. I mean, Jo and I, we did some work together on PSDP, and you know, there's a bit on PSDP which is about the kind of poor career progression of Black practitioners, and, you know, I sort of volunteered to present that bit, but didn't really connect with the impact it was having on me. I just said, yeah, I'll present it, and then, you know, then you begin to sort of reel off statistics.
Starts to ring home, doesn't it? It starts to hit.
Then you begin to think,
hold on a minute,
this feels familiar. And then I think Jo sort of said to me one day, you know, how does it feel sort of to present this material?
She's good at that, isn't it? Making you feel. She's always wants to make you feel.
So I said, actually, it's quite intense.
Hard, yeah. Because
you remember your own experience, your own lived experience, and it features some of these very statistics.
And where you may not have made the links at the time, when you start to present it, you know, you're like, hold on a minute, hold on.
This is me.
Yeah.
And I think what you were saying earlier about joining the dots, reflecting, you know, and I don't know if it's because we're doing things remotely, why it kind of sits with you as you're sitting in front of the screen all day. I don't know if that's anything to do with it, but absolutely, as you begin to reflect and join the dots, you have to pay attention to what it's actually doing to you. So another colleague of mine, of ours, called Sharon Jennings. I don't know if
big up Sharon. Sharon was she was at Goldsmiths too.
Yeah, she was. Yeah,
she was at Goldsmiths. So I think she took a couple of sessions.
Well, she and I, we've often said we can't really do too much of this without having some kind of
outlet, really.
Outlet. Yeah. We can't just keep doing it. We just can't.
No.
You know, it does take its toll.
It does.
So you are where are we
up to? I don't know. Hertfordshire,
BASW
teaching partnership. Right. So so I did all the stuff in the university, you know, and I think at that point I had a strategy. Now I know I always said I had a strategy and wanted to be successful, but I didn't really know how. Yeah. I think by the time I had my second, you know, role in higher education, I knew, okay, if my voice is going to be heard, I've got to be in a particular position. If I want to actually make the changes that I say I want, or that I see needs to happen, and that I'm talking to my students about, because again, that's what I was doing, you know, a lot of again, we were in lockdown, you know, so there's a lot more time to spend with students, you know, I was helping support them through what was an awful time for us all, but they wanted to give up, you know, a lot of, you know, Black Nigerian women, you know, we had a lot of Black Nigerian women on the course, particularly at Hertfordshire. And there was a lot of issues around them and their placements, and, you know, sense of self, not feeling held, so I did a lot of mentoring support informally with them. And I think it was then I think, nah, this is all too familiar. This is too common. This is too normal. Something needs to change. Something needs to happen, you know? So like I said, the role in BASW came up as the anti-racism lead. I applied for it. Obviously the experience that I had, you know, positioned me nicely to take on that role. And so that gave me a national scope, you know, to look at, you know, what I wanted to do. And the first thing I wanted to do was to make sure anti-racist practice was on the qualifying standard, the pre-qualifying standard for social work. You know, we're not quite there yet, but we're still working towards that. But I think that's really important that, you know, our PCFs, it talks about anti-oppressive, anti-discriminatory. Our students Black students, white students are not discussing race, particularly the white students, and not knowing how to approach conversations around race, not understanding how whiteness, is the basis of it all, and understanding that, and understanding the privilege, and how that impacts, on how racism is, how it's felt, how it impacts, and the whole arguments around anti-racist practice as well. So so in the BASW role is working with different stakeholders to try to inform, support. They kind of come to me as a consultant as to how they can make the changes, what they need to do from where they're at. As you can imagine, every local authority is at a different position, and
absolutely. What I guess I'm curious about, Shantel, because this is hard work. How were you being sustained? Because I personally, I can only take these kinds of roles in short bursts before I begin to feel as though I'm going to burst. How were you sustained? What helped you to kind of continue on? Because they're very visible roles, potentially can take a lot from you sort of personally and professionally. How were you sustained? And what do you, if you were not sustained,
how come I'm still here breathing, right? How come I'm still here smiling with my big glasses? And initially, I think I didn't really have an idea. I'm going to be honest with you. Again, had no. How would I know how it's going to impact me? All I knew. Remember, I said we're still in lockdown. I needed to do something. I'm sat in my room. I marched for George Floyd, in the middle of a pandemic. And I'm not ashamed to say that. That's how much it affected me. So I felt I've been given an opportunity. I can't waste this opportunity, So I think for the first 6 months, I ran on adrenaline. That's what it was. There was no plan. There was no make sure you take time out, make sure. It was literally adrenaline, a new role. I wanted to succeed. I knew what I wanted to do. I need to just get on and do it, by any means necessary. As I said, the first 6 months, you get after it and thinking, what, I'm feeling a bit tired now. I'm this, and my manager at Hertfordshire, I would have the conversations with her about it. Also, I had a manager at BASW, obviously. It came to a point where you have to, there's nothing else you can do but stop and be still.
Sure.
It got to that point where people are noticing I'm becoming very irritated. I'm crying a lot. I'm like, what's this about? Self-care bit wasn't happening. It wasn't happening. So I had to kind of stop and rethink and just go back to my support network and kind of reevaluate, how I take on this role and kind of how I pursue it, how I do the job, So I had to.
I think it's that's so important to kind of to share and for us to really understand, because I recall, I mean, I'm a little older than you, just a little bit.
Just a tad.
Just a tad. And I recall in the 80s when we were very much into sort of activism and anti-racism and anti-discriminatory practice. I mean, we may have used different acronyms or different names at
same
that
thing,
point.
though, essentially, isn't it?
As they say, same shit, different day. But I recall people who were working in that space, the very similar spaces to the ones you've been occupying. I met them some years later, and a lot of them had to end up in therapy.
You see?
Because of what, I mean, again, some of the training and the approaches to the training in the 80s were not messing around. They were militant, and it was necessarily that way. But it does take a lot from you, because you're in an area that impacts on you personally. You're trying to temper your anger, but at the same time you want
to remain professional.
Trying to remain professional.
Yep.
And some people had got a lot of bruising. And open wounds. I don't know about bruising. Some of them.
Yeah, I'm gonna say to you, gaping holes, right?
Yeah. So I think as well as the activism work that you clearly have been involved in, what also needs to be appreciated and understood is that it does have a significant impact on you, and for anyone who's working in this
it does. No, you're right, and you know what, in fairness, BASW recognized that. I wrote to each of us that was in that role and asked kind of what support we would need, or did they feel was essential. And yeah, I did begin therapy. Had somebody to talk to. And it wasn't specific, it's just general offloading the emotions. Also a mentor as well, to help me navigate the space, help me navigate kind of my future development, future career goals as well, and how I was really conscious that this work I was doing had to have a purpose, personally and professionally, but I needed to be clever in order to navigate that effectively, if that makes sense. So that's where that kind of it helps, because when you're in that space, for me, it was all systems go. You can't really think about the wider picture. And as you said, I stand on the shoulders of giants. The people that have gone before me, I felt like it was my duty to. I felt it would be disrespectful to give up. That's kind of the mentality that I kind of come from, really. Whether I see change in my lifetime is, questionable, but children, grandchildren, there has to be a change, and I'm hopeful that things will change. I have to be hopeful, because why else? That's what keeps me going. That's what drives me. It's that hope that things will change. It is slow, it is difficult to see. And, as you said, if I speak to, people like you and others who are, who are around in the 80s. I was around in the 80s too, but I was, sorry.
Be very careful, darling.
Sorry,
be very
sorry,
careful.
Dr. Smith, sorry. But yeah, no, I was just going to say that, they say, these are the same conversations we were having back then. Nothing's changed. Claudia was always talking about anti-racism, racism, this, and I was thinking, what's wrong with this woman? Why is she always talking about it? I get it. I get it now. But I do think things have changed. Maybe not changed enough. And of course, we've got a long way to go before we actually, we shouldn't even be having this conversation. That's my utopia.
Well, yeah, I mean, sadly, if I speak to young people of my son's age and those who are woke, as we like to say, they still express the same levels of concerns and the sort of microaggressions. And I mean, it just infuriates me, because I just kind of think, boy, are we still here?
Still
and then you see the same dynamics, and of course our youngsters aren't as experienced as we are.
Exactly.
So sometimes they won't necessarily recognize what the dickens is going on. They feel the pain, but they're not entirely,
have the words.
They really don't have the words or the experience to really say exactly what. But
neither did I until you're not
that young, Shans.
What do you mean? I'm remember.
But I think you're right. So okay, so let's move on, because clearly it's interesting. But then you find yourself at the Tavistock. At the Tavi.
So, as I said, Joe and I did the course together. So I was always hearing about what she's doing at the Tavistock, and I always remember thinking, oh, this Tavistock place again. Remember I said to you, we did a Tavistock model when I was training at Goldsmiths, and I was like, oh, why is this, this isn't, I don't know, it just felt, it just kept coming up. Anyway, the job, the role came up as a course lead. It ended up in my inbox, somebody sent it to me via email, and, I think you should have a look at this. What's this? Looked at it. I said, course lead. I was like, just carried on with what I was doing. And someone said, let's look at it again, looked at it again, looked at the job spec. And I think you was acting lead at the time, weren't you?
I was indeed.
Yes. So I think your name was on there, and also another lady. So I was like, just call for an informal chat about the role. I was thinking, I've got nothing to lose, So yes, I called up for an informal chat. I was thinking, And then, you know, as I said, you're still, that imposter syndrome, that I, could I, you know, that doubt was still creeping in. And again, went back to my network, spoke to certain people about it. And all you can do is apply, put your hat in the ring, you know, is what I've been told. Put your hat in the ring. You know, I want to big up my colleague, actually, Nicola Sylvester. So I worked with her at Hertfordshire. Yeah. So she was another, you know, person who held me up, you know, and would tell me, you know, come on, you can do the, you know, you always need that, you need that cheerleader. Yes. She was that one. Had a conversation about it, you know, felt okay. If I wanted, because again, doing the anti-racism role and looking at all the injustice and everything else, you know, I knew I wanted better for students. I wanted better for my social work students. I had an idea of kind of the curriculum I wanted or felt that they needed. The mentoring that you're talking about, again, needs to be part of it. Thinking spaces as well. I do think it's important that our students are able to reflect and, you know, able to really have that time. Again, going back to my PSDP time, where I was able to really make that decision because I was given that space to do that. So I had a lot of ideas, a lot of things I wanted to do. And when that course role came up, that was the opportunity I felt that I possibly could start, you know, on that journey, really. So applied for the role. You know, the interview went it really went well. You know, when you do an interview and you think, you know what, I did good. So even if I don't get the job, I know I did my best. You know one of them ones, and that's what it was for me. I was thinking, I said everything I wanted to say. There's a few things I could have done differently. You know, you can always critique yourself in it, and I think, you know what, yeah, I did good. So let's just see what happens in it.
Yes, I saw.
I forgot to ask you. Okay, let's not talk about it here. But anyway, later on.
No, let's not talk about it.
But yeah,
But
yeah, I think literally it was the same day. You know, I got the call to say, you know, you've been successful. Yeah, I couldn't hold in the excitement. You know, I literally screamed, "Oh my God!" Yeah, that was my word. Sorry, I wasn't going to pretend and be all, "Oh, that was so wonderful." I was excited. I was happy, and really made it shown. You know, made it known, I should say, that I was really happy to get that position. So I started that in January this year.
Yeah, what a roller coaster.
22, well, I mean, sorry.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, there's obviously a lot to sort of take on board, but the passion, I think, is what is so kind of clear from you know, how you've approached the role. And you know, it's not easy, especially
it's not an easy road,
as Budger Banton would say. For those of you who don't know who Budger Banton is, go and look him up. Oh my goodness, Shan.
The glamour and so I'm going to stop.
I'm leaving this in, you know. Believe you me.
Listen,
I'm leaving this in. Leaving this in. Chantel singing. So it's a huge undertaking. It's working in partnership with another university, and you've started in a time when I think we're coming out of COVID.
You know what? That's a right thing to say. You think, you know?
I think we're coming out of COVID, so there's all that to be sort of managed and to be dealing with. So Chantel, you know, I know this is a sort of a shortish interview in terms of our discussion, but what sorts of vision do you think you have for the social work master's program at the Tavistock and UEL? What's your vision?
At the moment, the course is unique in the sense that it's joint delivered between, you know, NHS Trust and the university. It's probably one of the leading courses in social work, you know, just because of the uniqueness of it. I think for me, it's about ensuring that we keep the standard, you know, keep that quality.
Yes.
Of course, I'm anti-racism and diversifying. So I'm really looking at the resources that we have, you know, on our curriculum and how we can make sure, because again, predominantly our students are from Black backgrounds. You know, they're Black, generally, you know, Black African countries as well. So it's important. I think that the curriculum reflects the students, you know, that are learning, but also reflects the society that we're going out to work in as well. And anybody knows the Tavistock is a very white institution, you know, and there is a lot of work going on around, you know, becoming an anti-racist organization, and, you know, looking at anti-racism on a broader perspective. So while I'm not thinking about, you know, overhauling everything, or, you know, I think the first few months, it has been about me coming in, looking at, you know, getting an idea about how things come together, how things connect, you know, and looking to see where, you know, I could make maybe the small changes, and then how to look at that on a bigger scale. So give, for instance, as I said, we're going to, you know, at the end of this marking period, because we're currently going through marking, we're going to start looking at next year about, you know, looking at you know, the reading, the materials. Again, it's about co-creation. I'm so big on having the students involved in the process. You know, I always
really
remember
exciting.
things being done to, you know, being done to me, and I just don't like that. Student experience to me is number one priority. And again, it's not a one-off piece of work. It is something that I want to make sure is consistent. We're having ongoing meetings, you know, even getting service users, looking at other courses as well within the Tavistock and outside. You know, I've made some connections with, you know, social workers in you know, on the continent, you know, the African continent, and seeing what we can take from there as well. You know, I know they'll be looking to us as we're the best, but at the end of the day, they need to understand that they have so much wealth within you know, their culture and their community. Yes, they may not have the structures and the systems that we have, but they have the indigenous knowledge. You know, they have, you know, the community, the grassroots type stuff that we need to bring back. So yeah, it's about those kind of collaborations I'm really excited in, you know, building up those connections, and really making sure that, you know, this course, the M23 qualified masters program, is fit for the 21st century. You know, it's current, it's up to date, it's contemporary, and it prepares our students for the work that they're going to be going out there to do. Because I think a lot of the courses don't really prepare people learn, you know, in their kind of first
as they go. Well, no, that sounds absolutely fantastic. I mean, we're heading towards wrapping up now, Shantel, but I don't know if you have any, well, I'd like you to actually share any kind of insights you have about our profession generally, our sector generally. What are some of the things that you think about in relation to our profession? What do you think about the future? I mean, I'm not asking you to predict anything. I just ask you to share what you think about the future and so on.
I'm always positive, and I always I'm optimistic and try and look on the bright side of everything that I do. At the moment, you know, let's be honest, it is really tough out there for practitioners, you know, in the field, in practice right now, you know, it's really, really hard. So, you know, I'll always stand in solidarity, you know, with my social work colleagues, wherever I can support, you know, to lobby or to campaign on behalf, you know, particularly in the BASW role, I will do so. Obviously, where I have the most influence now is with the students. You know, they're the social workers of the future. And I think, I do think it's really important that we prepare our social workers, really prepare them for the job and the role and the world and the society that they're going to go out there to have to practice in. So when I say that, I mean having that cultural awareness, having that knowledge around, you know, different ways of being, different ways of parenting, being able to talk about things like race and racism, understanding terms like whiteness and white privilege, and how the structures and forces have been shaped, you know, in a way that makes it more, you know, difficult for Black students, for Black social workers, for Black managers, you know, to reach particular positions. So it's about people having that knowledge and understanding, but also have, when I say people, the students, having done that internal work, that introspection, you know, looking at their position, you know, what they bring, and how that can be used and used to, in order to navigate the world going forward, really. So I do think that social work is going in a very risk averse type direction, but at the same time it's the foundation of social work is about social justice. It is about relationships, building those relationships, and I think it's important to understand the wider context, and appreciating different perspectives within our profession.
Well, I mean, I certainly hope that our students will listen to this podcast. I mean, I have every confidence they will, because I think what you've said and what you've shared are so important in terms of our profession and the path ahead. Okay, so we're now sort of at the end. I don't know, Shantel, if there's anything that you are involved in the near future that you might want some participation. I don't know if you're doing any presentations or anything that other people might want to link up with you there. I know that you sometimes participate on Twitter.
I am on Twitter. Yep, Shantel Thomas 77 at Shantel Thomas 77. Okay. 77. I'm gonna say that's my year, but it's not my year. It is my year, but it's not my year. Okay, sure.
Yeah, you wish it was. But I'll obviously we'll put those links, your Twitter link in the show notes. And you're on LinkedIn, obviously.
I am on LinkedIn. I am on LinkedIn. I am doing some, some keynotes at universities, coming up over the next few months or so. And again, they will all be on my Twitter handle. I'm also doing some work around Child Q. Again, I know we haven't really got time to go into that, but that's, that case really affected me, in terms of not just being a Black woman, mother, educator and everything else, on a human level.
Yes.
So what I talk about is anti-racist safeguarding. How was that allowed to happen? And where is the social work voice in that?
Yeah.
So I've written a small blog, that went out with BASW recently. I'm also looking at a much more academic type paper around, really unpicking, terms like adultification, violence and misogyny against Black women.
Okay.
So we're looking at racism, sexism, all those kind of terms, really unpicking that and what that means and what that says about society and what is going on, where is the social work response in that. So I've got some podcasts and stuff, been invited to take part in a few bits around that again, but it'll all be on my Twitter handle and
excellent.
So available as well.
So we'll keep in touch with that and obviously follow whatever activities you're involved in. So that's fantastic.
Excellent. But yes, that's the latest thing. Yeah, but just as I say as well, my research topic is around anti-racist leadership. And as I said, I'm putting myself in the middle of that. So that is something again.
This is for your PhD.
Yeah, for my PhD.
Well, no doubt we'll hear more about that as time goes on.
But yeah, thank you. But just to Shantel, thank you as well.
Yeah, no, it's been absolutely fascinating. Some of the material you shared about yourself, I knew a little bit, but I do feel as though I've learned a lot more. And I do think that those of our audience who are listening will have learned a lot about you, but also about what you stand for and what your vision, which is fantastic. So yeah. It's been a blast.
Thank you.